Thank you so much to all of you for making the time on a Friday evening to listen to me, and to Suraj Bhai for inviting me to speak here. I think we met at a similar setup for Rotary, and I hope I made a good impression because he invited me to come and speak to you. I also feel quite nostalgic coming here back to Nehru Science Center. When I entered this place, I just got all the memories of walking up there when I was a young kid and sort of spending time here and learning about science. And eventually, science had a big role to play in my life. So um, they've already introduced me, and so I think a lot of my story is known to all of you. But I'll maybe spend 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, talking about my journey from actually my childhood, my experiences, my ailment, my relationship with my grandfather, and then eventually building one of India's largest Ayurveda brands, and taking it to an exit, which is something that I was fortunate to go through at the age of 29. So Vaidhya, my last name means Ayurvedic doctor. I come from a legacy of 150 years of Ayurveda. So my grandfather, great grandfather, and generations before, all Ayurvedic doctors. The legacy of our business was not a business. My great grandfather moved from Morbi in Gujarat to Bombay to set up a small Ayurvedic clinic. He set this clinic up in Masjid Bandar, for all of you who know where that is. And as was customary at the time, my dada went to medical school. He went to Podar Medical College, not so far from here. Did a degree in Ayurveda and then graduated and joined his father. He worked with his father for 10 or 12 years, and then eventually my dada took on the practice. In the 80s and 90s, he became one of India's most successful Ayurvedic doctors. So he used to see 300 to 350 patients a day in that clinic in Masjid Bandar. He had 12,000 patients trying to him via post. And post, you'll appreciate, was the e-commerce of the 90s and the 80s. My dada also didn't care for business as much. He didn't care for sales, distribution, marketing, strategy. And he wanted to increase the access for Ayurvedic medicine. So consultation was always free at his clinic. You got a free consultation, and if you so chose to take his prescription and buy his medicine, then he would charge you. But he ensured that he gave access across income strata to Ayurvedic medicine. In the late 80s, my dad graduated from college, and he didn't study medicine. He was a businessman, and so he tried to take my dada's formulations and products from the hundreds or thousands of people that came to his clinic to millions of people through FMCG distribution. Doctors and businessmen don't see eye to eye. My dada never lost money in his life. The first year he tried to do distribution, he lost money, and so he told my dad, look, this is not for me. If you want to work with me, work in this clinic, or go ahead and do whatever else it is that you want to do. My dad eventually went his own way, and over the last 35 years has built a successful business in the jewelry and watch space. Actually, that's my family business. But I grew up with asthma. I grew up with juvenile bronchitis. I suffered. I grew up with pumps, nebulizers, inhalers, steroids. I was the only kid who couldn't play cricket and football. I used to play golf and squash as a 7-year-old, and I had a hand-eye coordination problem, so it was really difficult for me. I was the only kid who couldn't have Coke, Limca, Fanta, Sprite, or ice cream at birthday parties. And my grandfather saw that it affected me. So when I was really young, he got me on Ayurvedic treatment. By age 15, I was cured of asthma. The first thing I did was start playing cricket. I went to Dhirubhai Ambani International School for my 11th and 12th. And it's not a school known for sports, but I convinced them to put a cricket team up. And because I was the most committed guy to practice, I wasn't the best player. I just showed up to every practice. They made me captain of my school cricket team. It wasn't a great team. We played only 4-5 matches. We won 2 matches. That's about it, really. But that moment was an important moment in my life because Ayurveda had allowed me to overcome asthma and allowed me to do what I enjoyed, which is play cricket. Right? And so eventually I spent a lot of time with my grandfather. I spent so much time with him that I understood the family legacy, the formulations. I learned hard work from him. And then I went to college when I was 17 and a half to the US at Brown University. And at that time, I promised my grandfather that I'll do something with this legacy that he left behind. He convinced me to study biotechnology, so I would come back and bring a modern spin to Ayurvedic science. I went to a liberal arts college where I didn't have to decide what I wanted to do in year 1. I eventually studied economics and politics. My dada said he'd pay for my education. When I told him after the first year I'm studying politics, he stopped paying and he told my dad, it's your responsibility now. But my experience in the US actually crafted the way I think, right? So I saw the move towards natural and organic products in the US. I went to a store called Whole Foods in 2009, which absolutely blew my mind. And I saw yoga being repackaged. In my first year, my Dutch friend from down the hall was teaching us Indians yoga. With yoga mats, yoga gyms, yoga apparel, Lululemon, I saw a multi-billion-dollar industry built in the US from what was ours just repackaged and sold back to us. And that didn't sit well with me. I'm a very patriotic Indian. I wear this band with the Indian flag on my hand. I've been wearing it for the last 13 years. And so I called my dada from campus and I said, hey, we can't let the same happen with Ayurveda. We have to be Indian companies taking Ayurveda to the world and sort of making it modern and aspirational. So I came back to India in 2013. I came back to India at a very strange time. There was lots of negativity towards India in 2013 and 14, lots of scams. And so it was a not so positive time. 2014 government changed and there was a renewed focus, a renaissance of Ayurveda. Ministry of Ayush was created. Patanjali revolution was happening. Hundreds of thousands of consumers like you became interested again in Ayurveda. I was working in finance, in private equity, in a very comfortable job that at that time when I was 21, 22, 23 was paying me 30 lakhs a year, which was a lot of money for someone who was just out of college. But then my grandfather passed and I remembered that promise I had made him to take forward his legacy, and at 24 and a half I quit my job, not knowing anything about FMCG, knowing little about Ayurveda that I had learned from him, and zero experience in business. And I started a company called Dr. Vaidhya's to make Ayurveda appealing and accessible to modern consumers. That was the idea. I thought everything was great. I had a big launch event at Taj Lands End Hotel. My dada had left some money behind in the company. So I had this event, I signed on 6 distributors. I put in 10 lakhs of stock in the market in the offline space because at that time online businesses weren't a big deal. And I was a finance guy, so I started making an Excel sheet, 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs, 50 lakhs, 1 crore, 5 crores. And very quickly, this Excel sheet started making this business look like it was going to be very big, very fast. What I didn't realize is I was a small brand. Nobody knew about my product. Nobody went to the retail shops to pick up my product. So 3 months later, when I went to collect money from these retailers, they gave it all back to the distributors and I got 90% of my stock returned. Fortunately for me, I got to see failure very early. I got kicked and slapped in the face and realized that life and business wasn't going to be so easy. But I also realized that offline wasn't possible for me. There was Dabur, Imami, Patanjali, Baidyanath, Zandu, all of these brands. And there was no reason or right for me to win. I didn't have enough money, enough capital, and enough way to play this game. I was dating a girl at the time who was in the founding team of Nykaa after working at Goldman Sachs in the UK. We got engaged and I convinced her to join the business. She's now my wife and the mother to our recently born baby. But I convinced her to join the business and she said, look, nobody's doing Ayurveda online. So let's give this a shot. And so we changed the strategy or pivoted the business completely to be online first or digital only. That time there was no term like D2C. And November 2017, this journey started. In 1 year, we learned online business, Facebook advertising, Google advertising, how to create a website, what is SEO, how to dispatch orders. It was very new to us, but at that time competition was limited, so we had time to learn. That's not the case today. Online is a competitive market, but at that time we had time to learn. And in 1 year, we launched 29 products, took this business from 0 to 50 orders a day. Today you'll say 50 orders a day, what's the big deal, right? But in November 2018, single branded Ayurvedic website, 50 orders a day and 30,000 rupees a day of business was a pretty big deal. So we took 1 year to establish product market fit, and after seeing so much failure for a long period of time, we started smelling business, smelling that there is something that will happen here, right? And it'll scale. The good part about an online business is once it starts working, you just turn the gear up from gear 1, 2, 3, 4, and you do the same things more and keep pushing and you're able to get scale. So in 2 years from then, my wife and I built India's largest Ayurveda brand online. We scaled from 50 to 5,000 orders a day. We reached 2 million plus transacting customers. We encountered this time called COVID, which was actually very good for our business because Ayurveda came back to the fore. We were already leaders online doing 1,000 orders a day on our website. And so we navigated this time of COVID very well. While the first 3-4 months of COVID, most people were at home. We were in the warehouse packing orders because not so many people from our team were comfortable coming to the warehouse. In June 2019, we raised some money from RP Sanjeev Goenka Group. And eventually in April 2021, they made an offer to acquire or buy our business. I know some of you may be thinking, why would I sell 150 years of my family legacy? But I think for us at that time, we had reached the sort of close to the saturation point of how big this business could be online. And I didn't know how to do offline. I still don't know how to do offline. And so we just thought it was the right time. So we were able to see one of India's first digital consumer brand exits, one of the largest in April 2021. But that also meant that it happened so quickly, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so at 29, I pretty much left this office, which I'd spent 5 years of my life in, an office where I also got married while running the company, a company that I saw from 4 to 150 people, and eventually had to figure out what to do again in life, right? And so started spending time with startups, mentoring startups. I had some capital which I invested in more than 85 companies, and I started enjoying that. And so now full-time professionally, I run a venture capital fund, investing in the consumer space. My wife got really bored of this investing world, and so she's in the process of starting up again. But I think fortunate over the last 5 to 6 years to see the digital landscape of India evolve, consumption evolve. People wouldn't have believed that 82% of our customers actually came from outside the top 10 cities. We weren't a Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai brand. We were a Anantnag, Trichy, Muzaffarnagar and Imphal brand. I learned that the world is not only seen through our eyes. And after speaking to 1,000 of my first customers, I learned that English is not the conversation for them. 70% of my customers didn't speak English. And so we learned to advertise in Hindi, English and regional languages and really increase the accessibility of Ayurveda. I was fortunate also to be able to build this business and run a factory as well. I think that was one of the biggest learnings for me. I used to call my dad on the way back from Silvassa every time saying, do I really need to do this? I'd rather just contract manufacture these products. But running a factory with taking it from 4 to 50, 60 people, buying machines, understanding automation, I think was a beautiful experience that lots of startup entrepreneurs don't have. And I think as the world moves back to more offline business, I think that was a beautiful experience that I had. That's been my journey. It's been a beautiful 5 to 7 years. I got to learn a lot. I got to fail a lot, but through that, got to understand grit, resilience, and sort of standing up for yourself. I can tell you in 2016 October, if you just put me in a room like this and told me to speak, I'd be shaking. But I think being a startup entrepreneur and being through a lot of these journeys where you have to put yourself out there helped me with that. So it's been a pleasure to speak to all of you. Hopefully I added some value, and hopefully my story can help some of you think about new ways to do your business. But thank you for having me.
अगर किसी को कोई प्रश्न है, कुछ पूछना है तो आप अवश्य पूछ सकते हैं.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello.
Hi Arjun, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It's been really inspiring. And towards the end of your conversation, you mentioned about grit and resilience. So that I think was very beautiful what you said. So my question is around that. So do you think that grit and resilience, that is something that can be developed later in life, or is it something that you had because of your experiences when you were young?
Sure, no, I had zero experience of that when I was young. I came from a family business background. I lived a very sheltered life. Grit and resilience came when I failed and nobody could help me. Look, I think when I was building the business, I was 24, 25, 26, 27 years old, right? All my friends were having a good time in life. They were all getting married, having amazing destination weddings all around the country and the world. And we were always the people who showed up last. We would not show up for the mehndi, go one day late, and everyone would be like, what are these people doing? They're not even running a big business, like what's happening? And that feeling is a very tough feeling, right? You are planning a wedding in your house and you don't show up for the meeting, or you show up late for the meeting and your mom takes you on the side and says, it's crazy that you're not even involved in your wedding. And by the way, how's the business going? and you go back and say, actually, I did 0 sales today, like nothing at all, right? But I think from that, I was lucky to fail very early. And when I failed so early, I became okay with it very fast. So now when my wife is starting up and one idea doesn't work out and she fails, she's stressed for an hour or so, we have a conversation and it's totally okay, right? So I think I learned grit and resilience from practical experience. There was nothing else to do, but like there's a song that I used to like a lot when I was a kid. It's a song by a group called Chamba Wamba. It's called Tub Thumping, and the chorus goes, "I get knocked down, but I get up again, and you're never going to keep me down." And that's the motto of any entrepreneur, right? So the moment you get knocked down too many times and you know you have no other option, you just smile and move on. So I remember once I was going through a very tough time, and one of my dad's friends had come over for dinner, and he's a big businessman now, but I guess he would have, I don't know his story, but he would have gone through a lot of things in his life. And my dad was just telling him, you know, my son's really struggling with his business. Can you give him some words of motivation? And he said, life's a video game. Some days you're up, some days you're down, some days you die, but consider your business like a video game and you'll be happy.
That's a beautiful analogy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful story, and thanks for sharing in such a nice way. It was really amazing to hear. One interesting angle that I see in this story, especially it's relevant for the Marwadi Samaj or Agrawals. You took your grandfather's legacy, modernized it, and then took it to the market, and therefore it remains, in the market now. A question that comes to my mind is, these concepts are really picking up now. And you put in a lot of effort in establishing that. You could have continued with this longer. So what really pushed you to sort of think for a complete exit?
Yeah, so I think it's a good question. It's a question I've got like maybe 500 times since I sold the business. So I have the answer ready. Look, the business is called Dr. Vaidhya's. That's my Dada's name, right? And so stepping outside of emotion, and by the way, my dad is a very emotional businessman. He's a first generation entrepreneur. He thought it was absolutely crazy that I considered selling this business. He was like, what will you do in life after this is gone? What is your identity? But look, I didn't know offline. And I'm very clear of what I'm good at and what I'm bad at. And I'm totally okay to say I don't know how to do offline retail. I still don't. And at 7-8 crores a month in sales, I couldn't see the business crossing more than 15 crores, maybe 12 crores a month online. उसके आगे तो like जा ही नहीं सकते, मार्केट ही नहीं है इंडिया में, और तब तो था ही नहीं. So if I knew the future of the business was offline and I was not able to do it, what's the point of overstaying your welcome, right? At the end of the day, Dr. Vaidhya's will still be our family's name. Nobody will ever be able to change our name from us. And so what was best for the business at that time was this. I'm not going to lie and say that we just sort of did some daan and handed over the business. We got paid out very fairly for the business as well. I think financially it was a large outcome for me at 29. And, it didn't mean so much what the size of the financial outcome was, but for me at 29 to be able to buy a house in the same building my parents live in was a big achievement. So I think that was, I'm not going to say the financial outcome had nothing to do with it, but I think if you talk about from the business sense, I don't think we were able to take it so much far forward from there.
Thank you.
So, like in Western companies, at least they say that after a while the founder has to leave and they hire a professional CEO, and in India we think like that. How can you do that? But that's what happened.
I could see a lot of message which you have passed on because of sharing your authentic story and legacy. We, the Agrawal families, dominating in the business sector, but we have such stories, legacies, but we are not encashing it. And yet, after knowing your story and converting into the digital world and encasing in the current scenario, it's a good message for us. And how can we convert this as a whole, as a community? Can you say a few tips on this?
Sure, sir. So, after we we sold our, so I come from a family business background, so most of my friends are in their family business, right? We were the few people who were doing a startup. So actually I would find it very odd that I'd be out at a party and there was nobody to talk about startups to. But when we sold the business, that's when people around us started seeing this also can be done. You know, we can also do this with our business. We can also modernize with our business. And so I must have spoken to 30, 40, 50 people in my social circle who also want to do something similar. ये एक पैकेजिंग बिजनेस है, स्टार्टअप्स को पैकेजिंग बेचना है तो एक नया लाइन स्टार्ट करेंगे, एक नया डिवीजन स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं, राइट? द वन थिंग आई विल से इज दैट कुछ नया करना है तो शुरुआत से करना है एंड एफर्ट लगा के करना है. द अमाउंट ऑफ पीपल हैव कम एंड सेड टू मी ये आइडिया है बट मैं तो बहुत बिजी हूँ मेरे फैमिली बिजनेस में, तो आई डोंट हैव टाइम, ये करना है मुझे, बट आप CEO कुछ ढूंढ लो मेरे लिए, फिर वो कर लेंगे, राइट? एंड I think that's the biggest error you can make. If you don't put the effort in yourself, if I didn't work 16 hours a day for 2.5 years to establish product market fit, it's not going to happen, right? And so I think like I have a family business now in the jewelry space, and obviously after we sold the business, we went in and helped my dad bring some digital to the business. And today 22% of his business comes from digital, and it's a very high value product. At that time, my dad, who has 35, 40 years of experience in business, told my wife and I, for this, I'm your student. You tell me what I need to do and I'll do it, right? So I think that attitude or mentality of going down from scratch and starting from scratch is the biggest thing that I could say is a learning. And if that's done and you have the humility to say, even though I'm running a 100, 200, 500 crore business, I'll learn from scratch and do it from scratch, that can be very powerful.
Thank you so much.
So unfortunately, I have a 3-month-old baby who just had a ear piercing today. And so my wife has been calling me back home. So I may not be able to spend so much time with you after this is over. But I just wanted to say thank you, Suraj Bhai, for inviting me. And if anyone here wants to get in touch with me, you have my details as well.